So this is a video that's probably a little late in coming because this guy's been getting a lot of attention on social media lately. Nick Fuentes, who, like Charlie Kirk, is also from the Chicagoland area. Now, Chicago is like an island of liberalism and democratic politics in a sea of red. Okay, as far as the state of Illinois is concerned, without Chicago, Illinois would be a red state. Okay, but Chicago's population is so high and so dense that it keeps Illinois blue as far as like general elections. I haven't listened to him that much, I have to admit. Most of the stuff that I've read about him has been from secondary sources. I don't like to waste my time because it's not always clear when he's trolling and when he's serious. A lot of times he'll be challenged or questioned by an interviewer, and then he'll just say, no, I'm just kidding. So to me, honestly, it's like kind of like a waste of time to listen to him. But he is a white nationalist, okay? Now, the interesting thing about this is that he is actually Mexican, which is, I don't know if I want to say that it's contradictory because I would have to dig into his family tree. But as you guys know, the majority of Mexicans are what you would call mestizo, okay? Mestizo meaning mixed race, partly Native American and partly European. Now, the average DNA across Mexico, according to the research that I did, is approximately 65% European and the rest Native American. The particular ethnic group of European that we're talking about here is Spanish. Although there's some other ethnicities in there too. There's a community of Hungarians that settled in Mexico, I think about 30 to 40 years ago. And then there's some French in there too. But so there's other DNA in there too. But the majority of it is Spanish European. About 65%, and then the rest Native American ancestry, and the majority of this Native American ancestry is from the civilizations that preceded the colonial era in that region, so Aztec, Native American. So, Mexicans, the majority of them that I've encountered, just speaking to people, they just identify really as Mexican. There are videos, where guys go around and they ask, like, Mexicans, what race do you identify as? And they'll typically respond Latino or Hispanic, which is mistaken because that's not actually a race. The Latino is a cultural language group. Saying that somebody's Latino doesn't mean anything about their genetic ancestry. Right? The previous Pope, for example, Pope Francis was Latino from Argentina, but his ancestry was 100% Italian. And there's a lot of Latinos like that. So Nick Fuentes, being Mexican, he probably, and I'm saying this according to the odds here, probably is not 100% European. Now, you may say, well, look at him. Clearly, he looks like a white guy, and so he's got to be 100% European. False. There's a lot of people that look like they're one thing that are walking around with a lot of something else in them. There was just a story about a black mom who was running into a lot of problems because she had married a white guy and they had kids. Now, the first two kids were boys, and they popped out looking like a combination of black and white. The third child, however, was a girl who her nickname was, she's a really cute little girl, her nickname was Chub Chub. And she looked 100% white. And people were saying, oh, the husband must have cheated on her. And the woman's like, how is this even possible? I gave birth to her. Like, I pushed her out. She came out of me. Like, you're saying that my husband cheated and got a white chick pregnant and that he somehow teleported the baby into my uterus? Like, that's impossible. So they ran a DNA. She took a DNA test just to confirm it for all the doubters on social media. And, of course, it came back that the girl is hers. So this girl is 50% black and 50% white. Now, I mean, I don't know too many people in their right minds are going to believe that she's half black. But this is just an anecdote of what I'm saying, which is that there's a lot of people. Your phenotype, you really can't know anything by that, okay, as far as like how a person physically looks. So it's quite possible that Fuentes has a pretty high percentage of Native American ancestry. And even if he doesn't, I mean, he's still from an ethnic group where a lot of people do. It varies across the country of Mexico. In some of the regions like Oaxaca and Michoacan, you get a lot higher percentage of Native American, but in other regions like Guadalajara, the people are predominantly European. The white nationalists, though, Very interestingly, guys, there's been a shift. This happened to me about 15 years ago. I was approached by a guy who said that he had like a white nationalist group, a group of like young college age and early 20s white nationalists. And he was asking me to join his group. Okay. And, I'm like, nah, I'm not into that, man. And he was kind of pressing the issue. And I told him, I says, I hadn't taken a DNA test at this point, but I was like, I'm probably not even like 100% European. I says, people where I'm from, I says, I'm Southern European, and people where I'm from, we got a lot of, so many people colonized and enslaved us in that region that we've got a lot of like North African and Middle Eastern and stuff in us. And he said, that's not really a problem. He said, as a matter of fact, he said, I got a Latinos in my group. Now, this kind of took me aback because I was like, all the white nationalists that I had ever heard speak, they were like what you would call racial purists. They believed in this, like we got to keep the white race absolutely pure and we can't let any other admixture from any other racial group like infiltrate our gene pool type stuff. Okay. Well, the younger generation of that ideology is actually they're looser, okay, in their requirements. In fact, you would meet a lot of them that even like accept Asians, like full-blooded Asians into their group. And it's like they don't have the same, they're not as much as sticklers for like racial purity. That the idea of race is a construction, like arbitrarily drawing a boundary line around a particular gene pool and saying this here is a quote unquote race. Gene pools are real, as far as like a population being isolated over thousands of years and then certain genetic markers for people from that area emerging over time. That's real. But as far as like calling one or the other a race, it's not real. And so anyways, he has been a big problem for the MAGA movement and for the Republicans in general because he at first was aligned with Trump, but as his white nationalist views became more and more apparent, everybody else on the right basically cut ties with him. And one of those guys is Charlie Kirk. Him and Kirk were actually enemies. They didn't get along at all. And most of the other mainstream Republicans, it's the same thing. In fact, he makes a habit of dissing them and calling them all type of nasty stuff. And I'm talking about like mainstream Republicans. He disses them, including Trump. So it's him basically against everybody else on the right. None of them really get along with him. And as far as the PR aspect, he's a big problem for them because, the left continually associates him with them, which is something that they don't want. This is a time in American history when a shift is going on, especially in minority communities. In the immediate aftermath of the civil rights movement, it was pretty much like cut and dry. If you're black or if you're, not white, you're a Democrat, period, point blank. Like the Republicans are racist. This is the party of, the KKK and all this. Well, actually, the Democrats are the party of the KKK. But as far as like the shift that was taking place in the 60s after that, okay, if you're a Republican, if you're a supporter of the KKK, you got to vote Republican. And if you're anything else but white, you got to vote Democrat. It was like people didn't even have to know the issues. They didn't have to know how these policies were going to affect their communities. Nothing. Okay, 50 years down the road, though, a lot of people have gone back and begun to examine the effects of the policies of the Democratic Party on their communities because there's been a regression. As Charlie Kirk correctly said, okay, poverty has not decreased since the introduction of all these Democratic programs. It's increased. The family structure has completely fallen apart. Okay, and like I said, this is not my opinion. This is a statistical fact. The out of wedlock birth rate in all communities has gone up, way up, especially in the black community. It went from 25% to 74%. Okay, which is like I said, a threefold increase, and the ripple effects and the ramifications of that are just insane. So people are asking, was this really a good idea? And so a lot of people, that are not white have been trying to leave the Democratic Party and saying, okay, maybe the Republicans' policies would be more beneficial for our community. The problem is the level of discomfort, okay, because of the presence of guys like Fuentes on the right it creates a conflict between logic and emotion. Okay, this policy would benefit me and my community, but this guy that's, dissing me and, calling me all type of racist stuff, I'm not showing up to no rally with him. You know what I'm saying? Like, am I really going to vote the same way as him? No, ironically, Fuentes is actually not part of the mainstream right, at least. And there's a big effort on the right to embrace these newcome minority members into like Republican politics. And they're constantly having to explain and apologize for some of the people who still, unfortunately, cannot be forcibly kept away from the banner of republicanism. So this PR dilemma for the Republicans persists. And guys like Fuentes is one of the biggest issues. But you guys let me know what you think in the comment section, though, man. He says that his movement, operates best in the shadows. He doesn't want to reveal their numbers. They call themselves the Groypers, people who are like fans and followers of his and who support his agenda and his ideology. He don't know what he plans to do with his own people. Like, is he going to kick the Mexicans out? I don't know I've never heard him articulate an actual plan, but the modern alt-right, though, they don't want to kick other people out of the country. They want to split the country up and divide it into like separate racial states. So whether he's one of those or one of the real old school guys that just wants to like make the whole country white, I don't know. Like I said, I've never heard him be pressed on that issue, but the more like tactful, polite white nationalist that you were getting 8-10 years ago, he's replaced them. In this modern day of social media, he's the most prominent face now of this movement. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, man. Very interesting. These are your boys, Shy News. I'm out.